Nearly every day, we are asked for donations to various causes. We are asked for donations of our time, our money, and our resources. With so many options of places to donate to, there were over 1.2 million registered charities with the IRS as of 2009. It's not only overwhelming, but also intimidating and confusing to pick who to donate to and what to donate because not all charities are the same, especially in terms of spending. First, we'll look at the rules, requirements, and regulations on charities. Then we'll offer some tips and resources for you to keep in mind before you give. And finally, we'll examine a few examples of both commendable and unfortunate charity spending habits. The government has a large amount of authority over charitable organizations. There are specific local, state, and federal rules and regulations that must be followed for charity accountability. For example, 65% of expenses must be spent on program activities, and no more than 35% of contributions that are received because of fundraising efforts should be spent on more fundraising. All of the charity's expenses should be reported. The organization must have financial statements that break down expenses to show what portion of money was put into each fund or activity. Shown here is an example of this type of breakdown from the Canadian Women's Foundation. Finally, annual reports should always be available stating the organization's mission statement, explaining its accomplishments, as well as including a roster of all officers. Now that we know what's legally required of charities, let's go over some ways to be smart when donating. Following these tips will reduce your chances of fraud and might save you a whole lot of money. First off, give to groups you already know, groups you've known for a long time, and groups that you can identify as trustworthy. Make sure you understand the charity's aim. Give to a charity that you are passionate about. Second, don't assume that all the money goes to the needed cause. Look up the expense reports we mentioned before, and ask as many questions as you want. For example, what percentage of my gift goes to the cause? Beware of fraud. Not all charities can be entrusted with credit card information or personal information. If you are unsure about any aspect of a charity, do some research to make sure it's legitimate before donating. GuideStar is a great website to check the charity's federal tax filings. Other useful websites that provide charity assessments are Charity Navigator, American Institute of Philanthropy, and the Better Business Bureau's Wise Giving Alliance. Volunteering as much as you can at a charity can also provide you with an insight of how the organization works and how it is managed. Do not feel pressured to give to a charity you are wary of. Donations mean nothing if they land in the wrong hands. Now that we have the tools to identify and research efficient charities, let's look at a few examples that may or may not be worth your time and money. A good example of an efficient charity is the Michigan Anti-Cruelty Society, dedicated to the humane treatment of stray or abandoned animals. Of all the donations this organization receives, over 90% of the funds go to actual charitable projects. They have clear and transparent spending reports that can be found online, and the president of the charity, Linda Tuttle, is compensated little more than $21,000 a year for her work. A contrary example is the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. Only about 46% of their spending in 2010 was on actual charity work. A majority of the budget was allocated to administrative expenses and fundraising. What's more, despite the charity's $1.2 million deficit at the end of 2010, the president and CEO of the foundation still makes a six-figure salary of about $287,000 a year. Within the past few months, it was difficult to get onto Facebook and not see a few stories in your newsfeed about the Invisible Children Foundation. Yes, it was a media sensation, and it certainly seems like a worthy cause, but how is the money being used? Invisible children's spending has been a hot topic of debate.
There's no doubt Ugandan rebel leader Joseph Kony is a bad man, murdering tens of thousands of people and using a child army to displace more than 1 million others. But the nonprofit organization Invisible Children is also being scrutinized for what they do with the money they have raised. NBC is reporting that 1/3 goes to marketing, another third to administrative costs, with less than a third making its actual programs. And now the Better Business Bureau is speaking out, saying for 6 years Center's Invisible Children has ignored requests for charitable review. The BBB's Wise Giving Alliance takes a look at how charities spend the money they raise. The president of the Wise Giving Alliance said, quote, I don't understand their reluctance to provide basic information. The whole point of the effort is to shine the light of truth on a terrible atrocity, and yet they seem to be reluctant to turn the light on themselves.